Welcome to the Hoof and Fang podcast. I'm Kirt Graves.
And I'm Maz Maddox.
And welcome, listeners, to the frozen... I almost said frozen tundra, which I hate because tundra is by definition frozen. So just welcome to the frigid, cool airs of Wisconsin.
Yes.
Currently experiencing a polar vortex. What's the weather like by you, dear listeners?
Yeah, is it anything better than negative 15 Fahrenheit?
Yeah.
If so, you win.
Before wind chill?
Yeah, before wind chill.
It's just freaking cold here right now.
It really is.
So, yeah. Your last winter in Wisconsin.
Yeah, it's going out with a bang.
It's going.
It's trying to kill me before I can leave, I think.
Yeah. So, how are things going?
Good. I've been enjoying my dive back into the world of books and just absorbing content. I finished the Lily Mayne one I was reading, the impromptu match. Fucking cute.
Yeah.
It was a lot. Well, this is just me because I've never read this author before, so I didn't realize how much spice was in that book. My God, the stamina for these guys.
I know, right?
Holy crap.
Is it supernatural in some way?
No? Yeah, it is.
Okay.
So this guy is like an office worker, like humdrum kind of whatever. So it spoke to me in a way. And he falls asleep at work by accident and wakes up, and after hours, apparently the building is used for monster wrestling.
Oh, you know what? I did not get cast in.
Oh, did you?
In narrating these audiobooks.
Did you audition for him?
I was asked.
Oh, okay.
I was a part of the pool, but I was not selected.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. Well, they're fun. It's very fun. Like all the wrestlers are really hilarious and just have great punny names and shit like that. So yeah, I devoured the first book. I'll probably go to the second one. But I started a Tavia Lark book, actually, the Necromancer's Light.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Not ones I did either.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Well,
I keep somehow skipping yours.
Yep.
But yeah, so I'm about 30% through that and enjoying it. So I'm like,
I really love her world building. World building. A world building.
A
world building. Yes.
So it's been nice to just no obligations. I'm not trying to sit down and write anything right now. I'm just absorbing good content and just letting myself relax. And yeah, it's been lovely.
Well, good.
Yeah.
Good.
How about you?
I would say it's been a slow start to 2025. Today, January 21st, is the first day of 2025 in which I felt like I did a usual full day's work.
Nice.
Like we finally worked our way up to average.
That's great.
So
still in January.
So now we hold on to that until February when I take a trip, and then we'll try to ramp back up. This one was tough though. It was a long time off coming back. So to a very long book. So I'm hoping if I can do what I did today, the next 2 days, I'll be in a good place to take that trip in February and not feel like, oh, I'm behind.
Yeah.
So,
okay, great.
So yeah, fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. And I'm very excited for the next thing I get to record. It's the next in the Spectral Files series by S.E. Harmon, which are some of my favorite books to do.
Yeah.
Because the main character is just so fucking snarky. And in prepping the book, like I was reading the first few pages and just like giggling.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God, this is going to be so fun.
Good. That's amazing.
So that's part of my motivation too, is like to get the pages done every day.
Yeah.
And then I can start my next thing on Friday.
Yeah.
Instead of next week.
Love that.
Or having to work over the weekend.
Yeah. Let's try not
Fingers
to do
crossed.
that. Yeah.
Fingers crossed. So yeah, it's been a year already. It's been 3 weeks.
Yeah.
It's been 3 weeks. But we're getting there. We're finally working our way back up to productivity.
Love it.
Yeah. So, yeah. And with that, we move on.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
I was like, I don't have anything else really. Work was good today. I think this is one of the few times in work feeling either completely exhausted or like I messed something up.
Great.
Yeah. So I'm like, oh my God.
Also, didn't take that long.
Right. Exactly.
Couple months.
Yeah.
And now here we are.
So I'm feeling good. This is a good day.
Right. Good. All right. Well, knock on wood. Maybe we just needed it to be -15 outside.
Right.
To make us happy to be indoors working.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah. I don't want to be out there.
Instead of literally being anywhere else.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So if you don't already know, we do still have our Patreon going on over there.
We do.
And we're doing a Nickelodeon Animorphs series watch and review.
First episode
live.
has been fantastic.
We're reacting live to these. So you can check that out on Wednesdays. And then the early shift is our more personal show where we really just bitch about things.
Yeah.
That's on Monday mornings.
I love the early shift. It's just us being like, you know what's pissing me off
Right.
today?
You know, yeah, exactly.
8:30 in the morning on a Monday.
It's definitely not the professional version of this podcast.
Exactly.
Believe it or not, this is the professional version.
This is us.
This is that.
Yes. Yes.
But yeah, this is as close as we get to being professional on Hoof and Fang. So this weekend we had an adventure.
We did.
And we get to tell our lilisteners all about it.
I love it.
So we got to see TJ Kloon.
Yeah, our favorite TJ.
Our favorite TJ. You found out that he was going to be up in Sturgeon Bay, which is about an hour from where we live.
Right.
And he had not told us, or me specifically, so shame on him for not reaching out.
I love it because Rebecca from Paper Crane, our favorite bookstore in this area, because I know you also have a favorite one back home, she had messaged me being like, hey, are you going to this? And I was like, I beg your fucking pardon? What? And I was like, if Kirt didn't tell me about this, I'm going to yell at him. And then you were like, no, nothing.
I did not know about it.
Yeah.
I knew about his tour coming through the Midwest in February for his next book released through Tor, or re-released really through Tor, The Bones Beneath My Skin. I knew that he was doing the rounds. And I saw that he was coming to the Midwest and he was going to be in Milwaukee. And I was like, oh, so cool. I'll get to see TJ.
Yeah.
And then I looked at the dates and I was like, fuck, I'm going to be in Texas.
Yeah.
God damn it. Of all the times to be in Texas.
Right.
I mean, really, of all the times to be in Texas.
No
By
shit.
the way, I'm only going there because my husband has a conference. That is why we are going.
Yeah, not by choice.
It is not like our choice of vacation destination. It is tied to a work trip. But it was not on my radar that he was going to be here in January as well.
Right. So it almost didn't happen. Like it had we not got that message,
right?
Never would have known.
Would have totally missed it. So I immediately was like, hello, you literally cannot get to this venue without passing my house.
Yeah.
Because whether you fly into Milwaukee, Appleton, or Green Bay, all of the most likely airports he would be flying into, whether you fly into any single one of those, you have to drive past my house to get to Sturgeon Bay.
Yeah.
So what the fuck? Why aren't we hanging out?
Yeah.
And he was like, we can do this.
Right.
Are you coming? And I was like, yeah, I guess I am.
Yeah, still mad at you, but yes, I'll be there.
Now that I've reached out. So it was we got to go up. It was an event put on by, I'm going to get this wrong, Door County Right On program, I think it was called. Like Right, WRITE, Right On.
Yeah.
Which is a part of like their big book celebration year thing that they do all year long up in Door County here in Wisconsin, which I knew nothing about and was so cool to find out that that's going on.
Right.
So close to home.
They
and
have so many cool events too. Like
So
their
many cool
library
events.
is awesome.
And starting in the winter when, for those who don't know, Door County is definitely like a resort area. It's like a destination in the summer and fall for people from Chicago and other parts of the Midwest. They go there. The population booms in the summer. There's a lot of summer homes.
Yeah.
But this is happening in the winter with like the people who live and work there on a daily basis. So I had no idea what to expect.
Right.
Part of me was like, oh God, I hope TJ doesn't get there and there's like 6 people at this event.
Yeah. But a lot of people had traveled. Like I was hearing snippets from people who had taken their seats, and people had been driving up from Green Bay and other like areas. So I guess they were able to get the word out.
Good.
So good for them.
I mean, not to me.
Yeah, not to us, but apparently every fucking else.
Yeah, everybody else.
Yeah.
So we went, there was a 2-hour, as TJ calls it, his show.
Yeah.
A 2-hour show, which is a moderated conversation with another local author, followed by a Q&A session. Yeah. And we were there for that, all of that. And then he did a signing and we got to stand in line.
Yeah, we got to stand in line for like 30 minutes.
Always exciting. And then we went out to dinner and had a lovely time. So, so yeah, that's what we did. What, as somebody who had never been to that kind of TJ Klune event, what was your takeaway?
I knew he was good at speaking, like doing talks and stuff, but I'd never seen it myself. But I'm in the Klunatics group and stuff, so I've seen snips or like little snippets and recordings and stuff. But it was just fun to take his crazy verbal journeys, because they'll ask him a question and he'll start a story.
God, not the weave, not the Donald Trump weave.
It really is just like he'll start, like they'll ask him a question and he'll start answering it with not at all
literally
related.
He'll be like, okay, I'm going to get to that. I promise it's not going to seem like that, but I'm going to start over here and we're going to get there.
Yeah, at least he gives us a warning, because he was like, I swear it'll get there, but we have to start with porcupines. You know what I mean? Just like something totally not related. So it was fun to kind of watch him take, because he's a good storyteller. So every answer was kind of a story that he would lay out. But yeah, it was fun, man. I was like, I didn't feel like I was sitting there for 2 hours just because I was laughing and just really as like enthralled with what he was talking about.
Yeah.
It was fun.
Yeah. And I think especially over the years, he keeps getting better and better at it. Because I think he now understands that like he is the feature.
Yeah.
And so it behooves him to fill the time.
Right.
With whatever the fuck he wants to talk about and however he wants to tell the story.
Yeah.
He doesn't, like I think long ago in the GRL days when he would do something on stage, there was an economy to his answers, and he really wanted it to be about the writing and not about him at all, was my impression.
Makes sense.
I think he gets now that like people are excited to see him because of how good he is at telling stories, but they're excited to spend time with the person.
Right. Yeah.
And so I think he has embraced that and really, truly like was just so lovely and charming and just the right kind of offensive.
Yeah, he likes to really dance on that line.
I love it. And honestly, he wasn't as bad as I know he can be.
Oh, for sure.
So he knew his audience and he catered to them. And yeah, it's so, I have no reason to be proud of him because I did nothing on that, but like just watching him over the years, I was like sitting in that room, just getting to experience it from the audience. I was like, he's so good at this. I'm so proud of him. He continues to do great work, but he's also mastered this part of his job.
Yeah.
The publicity, the promotion.
Yeah, he's very good at it.
Not all people, not all artists are good at that. And some fight really hard against it. Like it shouldn't be their job. And I think he's done a great job of embracing that and making it his own and being a one-man show.
Yeah.
So he can say, welcome to my show.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming to my show.
I did love the fact every time he said show, you were like, is that what we're doing? Why are you saying show? It's so funny.
I mean, when I put on a show, I have,
Right. Yeah. It's a show with music.
There's a lot going on.
Yeah.
But sure. Yes. You're a one-man show. Good for you. Welcome to my show. Yeah, it was great fun. I will say, dear listeners, if you attend one of these events, TJ or anyone else, and there is a period of questions and answers, ask a question.
Yeah, don't just stand up and say you're great. You're just eating up time.
Right.
And also, I would imagine if I was on stage and someone's like, I have a question, you're great. Thank you. I don't know how to respond to that because I was gearing myself up to give you something.
Like, do we have a question? Somebody raises their hand. They get up, they walk, they pick up the microphone. And it's like, okay, but before I get to my question, I do have a question for you. But before I get there, I'd like to tell you how amazing you are, kiss your ass, and then also overshare about my own life, possibly cry.
Yeah.
And then I will ask you a question.
Yeah.
But I have already led you to what I want the answer to be.
Right.
So I hope you say what I want you to say. Thank you. Big fan.
Yeah.
Dear listeners, be a great audience member. Go to these things with questions already in mind and be ready to ask a question.
Yeah.
Because I got to tell you, the reason I'm saying this is not for TJ's benefit. It's for everybody else in that auditorium that when that happens, it becomes about the person talking and not about the person who's paid to be there to entertain us or to inform us.
Mm-hmm.
So the whole thing just comes to a screeching halt when it's suddenly like,
oh, we have to.
Yeah. And certainly do not scold the artist.
Oh, right. That one
The first
lady.
question was both a compliment and sort of like a, you're wrong.
Yeah.
The way you said this is wrong.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's like, okay.
Yeah. I want to be like, are you a school teacher? Like,
Yeah, right.
I know a lot of people, like the ISD was there, and I was like, you feel like a pissy English teacher. You know what I mean?
Right. It really, I mean, with the best of intentions, and I'm sure she thought she was like,
giving
bestowing
him
some wisdom on him, like, you have to believe in yourself. And it's like, we never said he didn't believe in himself.
He's got that. Thank you.
He's just acknowledging that like part of his career comes from things that are out of his control, and that he was lucky to experience the success he's had.
Right.
It does not demean or neglect the work that he's done to get there.
Right,
But she was like, you have to
take responsibility for how wonderful you are. I'm like, oh, he does.
Yeah.
I mean,
trust me.
Yeah, I was about
he
to
gets
say,
it.
He cracked jokes about how he was trying to be humble, but he's really just such a badass. Like multiple times. Like it's fine. He's got it. Thank you. He doesn't need your help.
Right. So that was really lovely. We got some tea, some dish at the presentation itself.
Yes.
So we know some things that the wider public doesn't know.
Mm-hmm. Shh. Yeah, we can't say anything. But
and then we went to dinner. If you're wondering, TJ Klune loves Mexican.
He freaked out when you were like, we have this option, we have Mexican food, and he was just like,
and I was like, there's a third option.
Yeah.
I'm like, can I get through all three options?
Yeah.
And then I was like, third option. He's like, did you say Mexican? I was like, yeah, okay, we're going to Mexican.
Exactly.
And thank God it was great.
It was, right.
Because we did get recommendations from people who live in, I'm sorry, small town Wisconsin.
Right.
Who said the Mexican food's really great. I was not sold.
Right.
I did not believe these white people.
Yeah. Agreed.
Until they said, oh no, a Mexican person owns it. I was like, okay.
Yeah, for sure.
I was like, all right, if there's actual brown people endorsing the food.
Yeah. If their
I'll
abuela like gave them the recipe, I'm there. I'm there. You know what I mean?
Oh, I don't care. They can get out of a cookbook. I just trust that they know what good Mexican food tastes like. And not like, the Johnsons opened a Mexican restaurant. It's so great.
It's called Taco Bar.
It's not too spicy.
Right.
Meaning they forget to add salt. But if you're ever in Sturgeon Bay and you want to go to Old Mexico, it's a great choice.
Yes, it's very, very good.
Not paid endorsement. We just really enjoyed it. It's 45 minutes away from my house, and I would honestly consider driving there just to have that food.
Yeah, man. Their margarita, well, I had a mojito, but the margaritas looked amazing. The mojito was fantastic.
The margarita was great.
And I had the street tacos. They were fabulous.
Yeah. Food was great. Drinks were great. Service was great. I would
recommend. I'd go back.
It's better than any Mexican I've had in Green Bay, and therefore, if I really want a good Mexican, I might just drive to Sturgeon Bay.
Hey, man.
Why not?
Yeah.
Wmore not?
If you do take me,
okay.
Let me know if you're like, we're doing this tonight. I'll be like, all right.
So we went to dinner where we found out lots more things that we can't actually talk to you about. But again, I'll look to you, who has not had that experience with TJ Klune before. Like, what was that like?
It was fun. I definitely hung back because I just wanted to hear about everything he was doing because his life is so deeply interesting. But there was a moment where I think you were explaining something and he looked over and he was like, are you still writing books? And I was like, I didn't even know you knew I wrote books. You know what I mean? Like,
I reminded him.
Oh, okay. I was like, I had no idea. And that was just, it was just cool.
Fully in our emails, I was like,
okay.
I was like, and Maz might come. You might remember Maz from.
Nice. Well, thank you for teeing that up.
Previous because I knew like he meets so many people on a regular basis that like
I was like, there's no way he knows.
I knew I would have to offer context for that if he was going to remember like, oh yeah, the Top to Bottom podcast and the author. Got it. You know.
Yeah. Well, I appreciated he tossed that out there.
Yeah.
So I was just like, oh shit, thanks, man. So yeah, he's just a cool dude, and like the dinner was casual.
Although that does make it clear that he does not listen to our podcast.
No,
because he didn't know what was up with you or what was going on in you.
This is fine.
Watch him make this. What if this is the first one he ever listens to?
He's gonna be like, okay,
all right.
He's gonna just email back. He's like, listen, it is a show, and here's why.
Yeah.
fucking funny. But yes, but it was fun, man. It was cool to hear all the fun stuff he's got going on, and just he's a casual, nice guy.
Right.
So.
And he has that thing where he is genuinely interested in other people, and excited to hear about things that are going on in their life.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah.
So it was great fun to catch up and to hear about the projects that are upcoming for him. Things, many of the things he was telling us, like, could come to pass or might not. But he's like, these are things I'm thinking about, or things that are kind of in the works. And it's all it's going so well for him, and genuinely, he deserves it, and I'm so happy for him.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful that he will give of his time to, like, somebody like me.
Yeah, go have dinner
to be
with
like,
us.
hey, can we please hang out? Because I really do owe you a lot, and I should probably buy you dinner at least once a year for the rest of my life.
Yeah, like an anniversary kind of thing.
Yeah.
Sure.
He did tease a little bit. He teased me a little bit because I forgot to bring a book for the signing, which honestly, that is stupid. Like I did not until this weekend have a book signed by TJ Klune. It's like, what the hell is wrong with me? I've had the great good fortune to see him many times.
Yeah.
And I never have thought, like, I should bring a book for him to sign for me.
I think it's just the way that you view your relationship and your friendship with him. It's because you're not thinking like, oh, TJ, the author. I think you're like, oh, this is my friend TJ. So you're thinking, you know what I mean? Like, or at least maybe I'm projecting, but
acquaintance and colleagues, certainly.
Yeah, for sure. It's like somebody who you have, you're not going to him as a fan. So you're not thinking bring books. So.
Well, and I'm both because
you are a fan.
And I'm also, as we've talked about, I'm very careful not to take advantage of that relationship. Because I do genuinely like him as a person, and I enjoy the times we get to hang out just as people, and it's not all about
trying to do a business or connection.
Right. I don't want it to always feel like nudge, nudge. Can you give me another book, TJ? Because it is fun to just hang out with the guy. He's good people. And so, it is, but it really was foolish to know that I was going to this event and I didn't like grab the books that are sitting on my bookshelf
nice ones
that I could bring and even have him just sign like Wolfsong, like my very first book, the one that he picked for me, picked me for the book and gave me my career, as he reminded me this weekend.
How did he sign your book?
He said, Kirt, you're welcome, TJ Klune. I was like, no, that's right. That's right. And then as we got in the car, I was like, welcome to the car that you helped me pay for.
That's great.
Like, I wouldn't have this career without you. So that career is paying for this car. So welcome to, I guess, your car.
You co-own this one.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's funny.
With me on the bank. So it was silly for me not to remember to bring a book, but thankfully the librarian who was hosting the event pulled one out, and I now have a book signed by TJ Klune. So not one I narrated, but
hey,
we'll work on that. Maybe that'll be the next time.
Yeah,
I'll bring one that I narrated.
Yeah, baby steps.
So we are now full of knowledge, things that we cannot talk to people about unless you get us real drunk at a party. So
so if you see us at Quills and Queers, maybe buy some drinks.
Yeah. So so it was a really fun weekend, and we had a great time getting to chat with TJ. Yeah. And he is not the only great author we've had a chance to talk to of late.
Very true.
We recently had the opportunity to chat with author Matt Doyle. Now, those of you who are Broadway fans, like me, if there are any out there, may have seen or heard the name Matt Doyle and thought, Tony Award winner Matt Doyle is coming on the podcast? Calm down.
Yeah.
Different Matt Doyle. Equally wonderful, different Matt Doyle.
Exactly.
This Matt Doyle is a pansexual, non-binary author that resides in the UK and writes sci-fi and horror with queer characters. We had so much fun chatting with them about their complex and fascinating stories. Here is our chat with Matt Doyle, the author. Welcome to the podcast, Matt Doyle. How are you?
No, I'm very good. Thank you. You're both well as well?
Yes.
Yeah, we're having a good day. We're excited to talk to somebody new.
Yes.
So for listeners who haven't been listening to the podcast before, we've had the great honor of interviewing a lot of people we know and have worked with before.
Right.
And then we started putting out the call to talk to people who we haven't worked with.
Yeah.
So we get to be just as curious about you and your work as the listeners are. And to that end, our first question for everybody really is like, what is your author origin story? Like, what made you write books?
Yeah, it's something I always enjoyed doing in terms of writing from like a very young age. Because certainly when if I was really young, I had to stay home from school sick. And my parents would always say, well, what can we do to make you feel better? Always be like, well, can you go get me a new Terry Pratchett from the local like W.H. Smith's? And I'd pick up things like that. So it was something that always kind of just gave me solace. And I kind of wanted initially to be able to do the same thing for other people. Then I discovered fairly early on when I was doing creative writing in school that I actually kind of leant more towards writing darker stuff, which was both a blessing and a curse in terms of what was coming out of my brain at the time. I know certainly some of my early stuff in school would have raised a few more eyebrows now than it did back in the 90s. So,
yeah.
Such as?
Yeah, I was like, now we got to know about it.
Yeah, well, let's see. When I was in, I would have been about 10. I was writing a story in one of my last years before moving up to what would be high school. And I remember I wrote one about a circus comprised of animatronic clowns that went on a violent killing spree. And I'm sure if I could find a copy of it, looking back on it, the language probably wasn't too bad because I was 10.
Yeah.
But certainly thematically, some of the stuff in that I think would have definitely raised a safeguarding concern now, whereas back then teachers were just kind of like, well, he's just being creative, isn't he? They all talk about Nightmare on Elm Street on the playground. It'll be fine.
Right. Well, and that element of fantasy, I feel like I am not a child psychologist, but,
right.
But I
Disclaimer.
do feel like, that element of fantasy is a good separation from reality versus some of the things that can be quite disturbing for young people.
This is it. And I think
nowadays.
For me, I was lucky because my parents were they had their limits as to what they'd let me watch and enjoy and things like that. But they were of the opinion I could tell the difference between fiction and fact. So, there wasn't really any real danger of me watching something that I shouldn't and then thinking, I want to do that. So.
Yeah. So, lots of people like to write as kids, but that doesn't mean we're all crazy enough to try to do it as adults. So what was that transition for you? What made you eventually be like, I'm actually going to put this out in the world?
So I have this sort of way that I try to live life in general. That if there's something that I want to do or want to experience and there's no really good reason not to do it, then I'm going to throw myself at it. Because life's too short. I don't want to miss out on things. And, if it's not going to make me broke or it's not illegal or anything like that, there isn't really a bad reason to do something. So that kind of encouraged me to kind of look back on it after I'd taken a while of not writing and kind of think, I'd like to go back to this. I'd like to see what I can do now that I'm not a child and see, whether I can get other people to buy into these stories and whether other people are just even going to just enjoy what I'm putting out there. So I started off mostly with short stories, which I was submitting to like podcasts and fanzines and things like that. Didn't really get anywhere with any of them. A couple came back with some very, very kind, but very useful feedback as to what I needed to change up. Because at the time I was just essentially writing pastiches of whatever I was reading, and it really, really showed.
Sure.
So eventually I just kind of thought, I'm going to try something completely out there, and I'm going to try this big, strange story, which became the Sparkful Chronicles. And I couldn't get that placed with anyone, but by that point, self-publishing was becoming a lot more accessible. So I self-published that, and then that eventually led me into being able to, again, improve what I was doing to the point that when I started the next series, that got picked up by 9 Star Press, which was the Cassie Tam Files. So.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's really cool. And I think it's a good thing to take into the new year is like anything that sounds exciting that you want to try to do, just do it, right? I think a lot of us, especially people who are creatively leaning, we get caught up in the like, if we can't do it, immediately amazing, then like what's the point of trying? Like you may as well just like throw yourself into it. Who knows? Maybe it's your calling. Maybe it's the thing you were meant to do, or it could just be a fun hobby that you did for a little bit and it didn't work, right? But it's always worth at least trying to do. And I think that that's something that doesn't get celebrated enough.
Yeah, and people as well, they end up with so many regrets over things that they didn't try, which, I mean, that to me, that's a whole other philosophical conversation, because I have very strong views on whether you should regret choices when it comes to hobbies and things like that. Certainly compared to the actual big stuff that you can regret. But it does seem like, if you're likely to regret missing out on something, why put yourself in a position to miss out on it? Just give it a try. Even if it doesn't go anywhere and you're just doing it and you never put a story out there for yourself, you just write it for yourself rather than putting it out for someone else, rather. I think it's worth doing. It's always worth doing just to experience it.
Yeah, it's interesting that the difference between regretting something you did do and something you didn't.
Yeah.
Regretting missing out on something is so... I don't know. It's existentially worse because it feels like you had an opportunity that passed you by.
Yeah.
So
for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, and we all have them.
Oh yeah.
So
I mean, that's just part of being human, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're listening to this thinking, oh, you're not.
But at the same time, I try
exactly.
to look at it like, I don't have a time machine, so I can't go back and change that I didn't do this. So I try not to really regret stuff like that if I can, because I'm not going to learn anything from regretting that. It's not going to change anything. It's not going to help me grow in any way. So as far as possible, just put myself in a position where I'm not going to miss out. And then if I happen to miss out, then, well, I made that choice. I probably did something else during that time that I enjoyed anyway. So it's one trade-off for another, isn't it?
Yeah. I would love to hear more about the series that you have written. It's up to you if you want to start from the very beginning, or if you're like, no, we can let that first one go by.
Yeah, right.
But I'd love to know, like, more about the series you've written, what genres they fall into, and basically hook us, get us, put these on our TBR.
Yeah, right.
I'll start at the beginning, because the Sparkfun Chronicles, it's certainly the scrappiest of my work, looking back on it. There wasn't an editor. I did everything myself, and it does show. I'm not afraid to say that it does show. But I do stand by that world and those characters. I still really love the story. That was it was a big jump from the short stories, because it was a ensemble cast, and it was a far future sports based sci-fi series. The idea was that card gaming has become a massive sport. People who play it tend to get these electronic plugs stuck into the back of their head, so they can hook into the game, and they use their cards to do holographic battles. They run at high speed, but it's all presented like professional wrestling. So you've got commentators, you've got people doing promos.
Cool.
The book sort of went all over the place, because you'd get the pros with the characters, and then it would go to one of the matchups, and that would be told in first present tense through the mouths of the commentary team. So you'd get the full intros for the character cards, and you'd get the what moves are being played out and things like that, and then it would go back to regular standard prose for the other characters again. So it kind of jumped about a bit, which was a little hard for people to follow at times. But I mean, the whole card game in it, I actually made a prototype of, so I could make sure the rules worked as well. So you get the rules throughout the book as to how the card game would work and what the cards would sort of look like and things like that. So I really kind of doubled down on it.
Yeah.
It covered a lot of different themes as well. One of the main characters, John Forrester, was in a sort of very friendly relationship with the hologram that he uses in every match, because his AI had claimed to be alive. And it kind of talks a little bit about what that means to, for an AI to be alive and things like that. Other characters like Fang, Star Chaser, was another competitor, and she would get a lot of abuse from people because she was born on a ship in space. So she wasn't classed as a legal citizen everywhere. So it was kind of, it tied up between her and her girlfriend with kind of a mix of gay rights and race rights. So there was so much stuff like that I was trying to pile into it, which possibly the biggest downfall of it, because I was trying to do so much at once, but at the same time, I had so much fun trying to make it all fit.
Yeah.
So, and people really liked it. I had a lot of talk of people saying they've never read anything like it, which probably true, because I don't know why anyone would be mad enough to try doing something like that, to be perfectly honest.
But it can be great fun to read a really ambitious project like that.
Yeah, if you can tell that the person's passionate about it, and obviously, especially with the card game rules, like it's a prototype, it's a real game, and you're learning how to play it as you're actually reading it. That's just cool. But I'm also a super game nerd, so I love that.
Well, I'm not, but I still think that's a really cool, fun concept to read about.
Yeah.
You know, I love in fantasy or sci-fi shows when they introduce because at first, I have to be honest, Matt, you said sports, and I was like, ugh.
Right.
I was like, all right. But then I was like, oh, it's like fun sports.
Yeah. Sports we can get into.
Like, you know, in Avatar, when they're doing like bending and they turn it into an arena sport.
Right,
I was like, yes.
Yeah, this, like in Legend of Korra.
Yeah, like that type of sports, love. Yeah. Sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, it kind of worked for me as well, because at the time I played a lot of Pokemon cards and Yu-Gi-Oh cards, and at the time when I started writing it, I was still a professional wrestler as well on the side. So I
you just dabbled. Hard stop.
Yeah,
you dabbled in being a professional wrestler. Like that was something you did for a while.
Yeah, that was one of the things that I looked at and said, I want to do this. I have wanted to do it since I was a child. There is a local school. So September 16th, 2001, I went down to the local school and I stayed at it for about 9.5 years.
Holy crap. That's amazing.
Well, and talk about another setting where storytelling is really important.
Yeah, right? That's amazing.
Yeah, it really kind of lends itself to it. I was forever trying to flog the books at shows as well. Because I used to write I wrote a webcomic with my then partner, and we did some print versions that we would sell at the shows because they were also a wrestler. So we kind of got to do a bit of cross promotion with it, but never really worked out. It was slightly different audiences, but it was always worth a shot.
Yeah, why not, right?
Right.
It's like guerrilla marketing at its best.
Not to mention, for the rest of your life, you get to drop that into conversation.
No shit. Like that's an amazing, like, oh yeah, I just dabbled in wrestling. No big deal or anything.
You know, when I was writing a fantasy series and also a wrestler. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You sound like a character in a book. Like, I would read this. This is so cool.
Oh, God, though, if I was a character in a book, it would be far too tragic a book.
I don't know. We like them angsty.
That's true.
I do think, though, like, just to go back to the idea of, like, a really expansive world building, like, to me, that's the part of writing that I so admire and love. Like we talk about on the podcast all the time that like when it comes to like sentence structure and grammar and all of those elements of writing that are also very important,
right,
that is often somebody else's job. That's not the author's job. The author's job is to have ideas and to create worlds.
Yeah.
And so I'm never mad at the ambition of great, expansive world building.
Yeah.
In fact, sometimes I get frustrated when the world building doesn't go far enough.
Yeah,
Let's explore this really cool world that you've kind of hinted at happening outside of this little storyline that we're doing.
Right.
So, no shade from us on expansive storytelling.
It leaves me in a kind of a mixed place though with that series, because there's part of me that kind of thinks I could go back now and try rewriting that and tidy it up a bit, and in some ways it'd be a better story, but. If I ever had the time. But then in other ways I kind of look in and think part of the appeal though was how sort of scrappy that was. I think it was very rough around the edges, but people seem to really get on board with that. So it's, whether I would ruin it by trying to tidy it up is the question.
Yeah.
Well, maybe not a rewrite, but an adaptation.
Yeah, maybe or like a spinoff or something.
A different form.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah,
dramatize it.
That would be fun.
Yeah. Continue writing in the world somehow.
It sounds like the kind of thing that would lend itself well, actually, to like a storytelling podcast.
Yeah, like if you made it like a serial or something, that'd be really cool.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I would love to do something like that. I mean, sort of the thing that I'm working on at the moment, I think I'm kind of intending to try and get it done as a recording at the same time, because I think it would work really well. So,
yeah. Well, speaking of things you're working on now, let's move on from the very first thing you did,
right,
and talk about more. What came next?
So after that, I started going through back in the days when I enjoyed Twitter. There was a Twitter pitch event, and I was pitching something on there that was. I started writing it after binge watching. I think I'd been quite ill. and I'd watched Blade Runner and then The Maltese Falcon back to back. And my brain just sort of went, we're going to write a sci-fi mystery story. So, are we? Okay, then let's do that. And I wrote this book called Addict, which was about a Chinese-Canadian PI called Cassie Tam. She was working in a near-future city called New Hopeland, which was built on in the Utah desert. Okay. It was designed to be sort of cyberpunk-ish, which it was described as a couple of times actually by readers, which I was quite happy about because it wasn't quite full cyberpunk, but it was kind of playing with some of the ideals and the themes. Mm-hmm. And it just became this sort of LGBTQ story about virtual reality addiction. And she's investigating the death of someone who that says there's two types of VR addict. One that does works in VR and becomes addicted to it because they're working such long shifts, and others who just kind of hook into it for long periods of time, and that they kind of take DIY drugs to increase sensations and things like that. And she's investigating a death that the police ruled out as being very sort of mundane for that end of society and very just, it was just an accident, it's what happens. And she's finding more and more evidence that it's not what happened. And that was thankfully picked up by Nine Star Press. I think I was offered a couple of places wanted to read it, but the more I was looking into them, I was kind of thinking, well, these look like vanity presses. So I'm not really comfortable with that. Nine Star were fairly new on the block at the time, but I loved that they were focused entirely on LGBTQ books because I never had many of them growing up, or any at all, really. So I kind of wanted to be part of getting that out there, And yeah, Addict did quite well. People think it's still the most read and reviewed book I've got out there. Like a lot of series, I think it kind of, as the series went on to the fifth book, sales drop off a little bit as it goes, because obviously more people try the first one, then think, not for me.
Sure.
It's a natural thing. But again, Addict, probably the weakest of the 5 books, but it's the one that people really love. They particularly love, she has a AI pet who's a robot gargoyle, who's described as being this small, squat, beaked gargoyle thing that's as loyal, as fierce as the loyalist guard dog you can have, but as sarcastic as a particularly sarky house cat. And it just, all he can say
is... Say less. Yeah. Sold.
That's so great.
And people love that. It's just every now and then, little Bert the gargoyle will waddle in and just say, ha! And then that's all he needs to do for people to love him. It is wonderful. She talks about how, like, one day she went out to do a case, she came back and she found that the flat was a state because Bert had got bored and decided that the bag of sugar might be an intruder and had dealt with it.
Oh my God.
That's so cute. I love that.
Cheeky pets are always a great way to liven up a story.
For sure. And how can you not love like a sentient, sassy gargoyle? Like, that's amazing.
Yeah, he kind of became more important as the series went on as well, because he was away. The thing with Cassie was that she lived and worked in a city that was very tech driven, but she herself was not a fan of there being too much tech. She just accepted that it was part of her world and she was going to have to deal with it. And as time went on, with Bert, she was kind of experiencing this idea of, do I view him as a machine? Do I view him as a tool? Or is there, something closer here? Do I view him as an actual flesh and blood pet? Is this a living thing to me? And then, of course, that helps introduce her as one to helps her open up with other concepts, things that she's closed off about with issues from previous relationships. So eventually opening up to her girlfriend by the end of the series and things like that. And yeah, then the whole series just kind of delves into the idea of the corruption at the root of the city and who is in charge of that and what has caused that and why it's going on. And it kind of comes to a very non-cyberpunky kind of ending that was kind of built for me to be a way to give Cassie a happy ending, but also act as kind of a warning that even the best people who have the best of intentions can still end up wrapped up in the worst of things without ever meaning to. Because she always had that view of sometimes the bad guys do win all you can do is just try to make sure it doesn't happen as often. And she kind of lives by that, and it just she ends up kind of too embroiled in everything to be able to back out.
Yeah, makes sense.
Mm.
Well, at least it's still a happy ending. Like, I'm all a champion for that. But no, I can appreciate that sometimes those endings can't always be wrapped up in a pretty bow. Like, the story's going to have to just go where it needs to go. And yeah, it makes sense that having to going after a big corrupted, plot point like that, you're going to very rarely do people get out squeaky clean. So that makes sense.
You could kind of leave it with her then that, she can still be fighting this. Just maybe it's not the way people expect it to end up. So
I love a messy ending.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh God, because it's almost less believable when things are tied up so deeply.
If everything's I'm a romance author, so I'm like, everything's got to be buttoned up and perfect and sunshine, otherwise I'm sad. But from an artistic standpoint, messy endings of course can be. I like more realistic things and like dramas and thrillers and things like that. So that makes sense.
Well, it sounds like she gets her happily ever after relationship wise.
Yeah.
Okay, I was like,
but acknowledging that the world
See, that's fine.
relationships exist is imperfect. And it is a constant struggle. And especially nowadays, it just seems like we go from one catastrophe to the next. And it's hard to ever feel like we're making great progress. Like, it is relatable to be reading a universe in which you can make progress, but know that there's always more work to do.
Right.
I like that. But I was also like a dark little kid, so maybe that's just what we have in common. And I'm here for the
for the sad things, the dark things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The almost pragmatically realistic
takes. As a teenager, I think. So it's
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Love that. Okay, so you've done 2 full series at this point. What's next?
So after that, I started going on to standalone stuff. I'd done a couple of anthologies around that time where I'd had a couple of stories submitted different places and they'd taken them. And then a couple of times where they've reached out to me and said, "Hey, we're doing a charity anthology. Could you do a story for that?" And I'm like, yeah, cool. And I noticed that the shorter stories tended to be a lot darker. They tended to be purely horror. So I figured, well, the next longer one, people have already kind of described the Cassie Tam files as sci-fi for people who don't like sci-fi. That was a really common thing from reviewers for that. So I figured, well, I kind of like being people's gateway into sci-fi. So let's see if I can mix this up a little bit more and we'll just go completely wild on the next one. And I'd been rereading Mark Z. Danielewski's House of Leaves, if you know that one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, so I was on my fifth or sixth read.
It's a chaotic, crazy-ass story.
Cool.
It's meant to not... you're basically reading somebody descending into madness, from their point of view, and it's crazy.
I don't need to read somebody descending into madness. That's just 2025.
Yeah, right?
That's just the day. I mean,
it's just Tuesday.
Yeah, it's a labyrinth of a book. Especially with the way it's laid out and the way you can have 3 stories going on the same page and some pages with just one word and things like that. So I thought, well, let's go a little bit wild. And I started writing something that initially I'd intended it to be a movie script rather than a book. And I got about a quarter of the way into the script and I thought, actually, this is going to work better as a book. So let's revert back to form. And we'll see what we do, which was Iluros, which I think I've got a copy around it. Bear with me. Always have to try and show this one when there's a camera, because the book ended up with a very unique layout in the print copies, where part of it is, you can see here, audio transcripts.
Oh, wow.
Part of it is... skipping a few pages, regular prose, and those are only on the right-hand side. On the left-hand side, there are notes. And the reason it's written like this is it's a story about, if you just read the right-hand pages, it's a homage to Alien, but very queer. So basically, Alien with queer characters. And it's sci-fi, it's horror, it is just a very straightforward thing. if you read the notes on the left-hand pages as well, which you don't have to because you'll get a full story if you just read the right-hand pages. But if you read the notes as well, you learn that the main couple in that story actually live in our time. And the whole thing is a virtual reality sim. And what's happening is the government uses a system where they inoculate you against specific negative emotional responses, like anger, jealousy, things like that. Then at the end of the month, you go into the VR sim and you let it all out in a very controlled way. And it's all kind of based on the technology. I don't know if you've seen, because this is a real thing they did in Japan. They were scanning people's brainwaves so that they could get an AI model to read these brainwaves and recreate what the brain is thinking of. And they would show them like a picture of two ducks facing that way. And then they'd tell them, okay, think of that photo, think of it clearly in your head. And the brain scan would happen, and the AI would recognize there's two ducks, and it would recreate two ducks, but they'd be facing opposite ways. And it would be kind of blurry. But the technology is coming where people are essentially going to be able to read minds. And you can then use that for anything from, I don't know, confessions in a crime case, which has all sorts of ethical issues, to controlling a video game, for example. And that was the idea of this. And you learn that they actually, this couple, while they seem very happy in the VR sim, they actually have a very messy relationship. And this is all then becomes tonally a lot darker. And then you get a kind of a twist ending, which brings it all the way back around to this idea that, is this sort of system really something we want? Is this something that would be open to too much abuse? Could people manipulate it? How could they do that? And so on. There are, I think it was 5 or 7 hidden passages in the book as well that you can pick up little bits that where you can see repeated patterns that will form other words or that will form Morse code or binary and things like that. And if you get them, it kind of alters both endings a little bit. You still get the core of it, but depending how you feel about the characters, it may change whether it's a happy ending for you in that. So I just went completely wild on it. And
how
again,
long did it take you to plot all of this out?
That one took me about 2 years to write, from start to finish in the end.
That doesn't seem like a lot.
So much.
Yeah, like 2 years doesn't seem like enough time to plot that much hidden stuff into one book. For me, like that's so much and so cool.
But
and
see, for me, that
is
intense. A long time. It would normally take me about 6 months to write a book because I'm more of a pantser than a plotter. I'll have like a rough idea of how I want this to start and end and maybe 1 or 2 points that I want. But other than that, I'll just go for it. This one, I realized very early on, I need to plan this meticulously or this is not going to work. Then again, I put it in a Twitter pitch event and Fractured Mirror got hold of it. I got a nice video call with them, speaking with them, because they didn't really do horror. They were, again, a new publishing house. New publishing houses seem to get on better with me than established ones, I think. But they read it, and they're like, we really love that this is kind of House of Leaves meets Alien. We could do something with this. So we could have signed on to that, and they came up with the layout for the print edition. I suggested that for the ebook, we should maybe do it as pop-up end notes rather than laying it out like that, because you can't on a Kindle have the 2 pages side by side.
I was going to ask you how this takes form in any other way when it's so when the layout is so important.
Initially, we didn't even consider it. It just kind of hit me as we were working through the editing, and I was kind of like, actually, that will not work on an e-reader because you can't have the side by side pages, and the notes, they line up with the points that they're addressing on the other page. So it is so important to see that layout when you're looking at the print version. So EndNotes was kind of the best way around it. But again, it gives you 2 ways to read the book, and the book can be read as just the right-hand pages, or it can be read as both, and you can choose as well whether you try and read both at once or whether you read one and then go back. It's a book that I think it's open to so many people because you can read it in so many different ways. The downside is it is incredibly hard to pitch it. You can't. An elevator pitch on this is so difficult to get people because I don't really know how to classify this, because it is sci-fi, it is horror, it is experimental, it is sort of House of Leaves, but it's more Stephen Hall's Rorschach texts in some ways, and it's so hard. And you get as well, I'll say sometimes it's primarily the cast are LGBTQ characters, but there's no erotica in it. So there are some readers who have said, well, it's not an LGBTQ book then because it has to be erotic. And I'm like, does there though? Really? But, and
okay.
Yeah.
You know what? People on the internet have opinions.
They really do.
And sometimes they are strange.
Yeah.
But yes, that was the next one for me. I kind of went back to just being very kind of, I'm going to be weird with this book, as weird as I possibly can be, and I'm going to enjoy the hell out of doing it. And I'm going to use the monster that I did in the old webcomic and then I used the same monster again in the Sparkful Chronicles, and now I've used it again here because I really love the design. It's like a giant, if you can imagine, like a 6 foot tall rubber band covered in a layer of eight rows of porcupine-like quills on the inside and a sort of puckering, semi-translucent back, and it's vicious and violent and horrible and deadly, and it is built for microgravity. So it can float around so easy. There's like a whole section in that book of someone dissecting one of them and talking about why it works in microgravity, why it works so well in that environment. I put so much thought into trying to make this creature make sense for that. So,
does this all just exist in your head, or do you have like a brain trust of friends or editors or people that you can talk to help develop these ideas?
The ideas just vomit up in my brain, and I kind of just have to clean the mess away and see what's there underneath. So.
I think that's a gift.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Well, thank you.
Thanks to Matt for joining us for the podcast. We are loving getting to know these new to us authors.
Yes, this has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, like Matt, along with some other people who you will hear on the podcast shortly, some of whom have already been on, like our authors who reached out to us wanting to be on the pod. And that's great. We encourage that. So if you are somebody like that, please reach out. We'd love to talk to you if you're writing queer sci-fi fantasy stories. If you are a Patreon subscriber, you can actually listen to the rest of our conversation because we cut it off a little early since it was running long. And the rest of our conversation will be, you can watch it in the Patreon app, or you can listen through your podcast app for our Patreon subscribers at least the $5 level.
Yeah.
So that you have that to look forward to. Thanks so much for joining us for another episode of Hoof and Fang, guys. We appreciate you. And just look in the show notes for all the links that I always say for you to find. Just go there. If you want to find us, we're there.
Yeah.
And you can also reach out on any of the social media apps or email us.
We're around.
Yeah. We love to hear from you. So, everybody have a great week. Stay warm if you are anywhere where this polar vortex is affecting you.
Yeah.
And we will talk to you next week.
See you then.